my mama had a gallbladder operation and asked if I would come up there and help her. And I was glad to be with Mom, when I could. I have to tell you, Mom was one of those kind of people. We had heard, that Mom was a little on the wild side. They called them holy rollers back then. And I just knew I'd be all right because I wouldn't go to church with her, I would just help her. So I went up there, and this was 3 years after this experience. And I went up there, and the TV was broke or something. Anyway, she didn't play cards, she didn't go to shows, she didn't do this, she didn't do that. And I said, well, what do you do? And she said, well, we read. And here was this big old dog-eared Bible on her coffee table. It was well used. And so I just picked it up. And when I read a magazine, I don't know about you, but I start at the back. And I work my way up like this. Guess what book I open to? Revelation. And when I did, and I began to read Revelations, the hair on my body stood up. You could have cut it off with a toothpick, I think. I ran to her and I said, Mom, this book is real. And she said, yeah, I know. I said, no, not like that. I don't mean, yeah, I know. I mean, it's really real. I mean, it's really true. And she said, why? And so I sat, and all night, Saturday night, we sat, and I told her what had happened to me and how the book of Revelations explains everything that I saw. Can you imagine how I felt? I was astounded. I had never read this, but yet I was there. And I said, Mom, is the rest of it this good? She said, yeah. And I said, I've only got a week, and it's a big book. Can you show me where to start? And so she turned me to the book of John. Now, if she'd have said, look up Psalms, I'd have thought Pestilence and the book of Job. I mean, that's the only way I did not know the Bible. So she handed me the book of John, and I read, and right then is when I fell in love with Jesus Christ, because it tells of his character. It tells of how he feels. And I've been in love with him ever since. But she didn't tell me to stop, see? And I read right on over into the book of Acts. Now, you think I didn't know anything about this. When I got to the book of Acts, I was really out of my league. And it got to the part about the day of Pentecost. Well, I didn't know about Pentecost. I'd never heard. See, I didn't even know what born again meant. I mean, you talk about Nicodemus. That could have been my last name. And so I read about this worshiping in an unknown language, other tongues. And I said, Mom, is this true? What's other tongues? And she said, well, honey, it's just a language that you've never gone to school to study, that God gives you. It's a language you've never told a lie in or told a bad joke in. It becomes a pure language with which you can worship a pure God. And I said, fine. You know what state I'm from? I said, do you do it? She said, yeah. And I put my hand on my hip just like this, and I said, do it. And she said, no, I'm not going to perform for you. She said, if you get tongues, it's going to be because God gives them to you, not because you're mocking someone else.
Wise mama.
Wasn't she, though?
Yeah.
So she asked me then if I'd go to church with her the next day, and that really scared me. See, I'm from the old Catholic teaching, and I thought lightning would come out of nowhere and strike me dead if I walked into a Protestant church. But anyway, do you all have perfect, you got your own private pews in church? Your regular? Well, Mom did. She sat, there was 4 aisles. She sat in the second one, the 4th pew back, about the 2nd or 3rd seat on the inside. So we marched up there, and I said, now, Mom, don't get excited if I leave, because if they got wild, I was out the door. I mean, I would be out of there in no time. And because we prayed like this, very silently. And so I sat down next to her, and then a whole family came. The church was packed. Whole family came in and crowded us in the middle, so there was no way I could get up gracefully and get out. And I thought, oh, I'm sandwiched in here. And so anyway, the preacher, what they started to sing was the first thing. I know nothing, at this point. And this little lady in front of me had her hair pulled back with a little knot in the back. She was a cute little grandma. First thing she did was raise her hands and begin, and I thought she had to leave the room. That's the only thing we ever raised our hands for in school, is we had to leave the room. Well, pretty soon everybody was doing it. I thought, they must have had a watermelon party or something in here. And then I thought, this is truly what I thought. I thought, God, you'll never catch me doing that. I thought that was the most disgusting thing I had ever seen in my life. It was hot, no air conditioning in the church. Raise your armpits up, little circle. I am not about to do something like that. It disgusted me. And so after that was over, then the preacher came up, and you know what? He started talking about Jesus like my dad did. That time that made me wonder. And I thought, here's somebody else that knows Jesus like that. And so he gave what was known as an altar call, and I had never heard that word. I didn't know what an altar call was. But he said, if there's anybody out there that would like to know Jesus better than they do, he was talking to me. If he'd have said born again or saved, I'd have slugged him, man. I'm saved. I love God with all my heart. But yet, when he said, is there anyone out that wants to know Jesus better than they already do, I just made a beeline. I didn't have to have anybody touch. I just went up. When I got up there, he said, what is it you want, little lady? And I said, well, I want to know Jesus better than I already do. And he said, have you asked him into your heart? And I said, no, but if he fits in there, he's sure welcome to come. Jesus, come in. I was going to do anything it took. Jesus, come into my heart. I was hungry, like the deer that pants after the waters.
Yes.
And I said, Jesus, come into my heart. And he led me in a prayer that he would guide my life. Well, lightning didn't flash. I didn't get killed. And so we went home. And that Bible drew me like a magnet. And that's when I found out about the tongues and all. So I couldn't wait till the next week when I get back there, because I wanted that gift. Well, see, yeah, you had to get it in church. You can't get nothing at home. You got to go to church. And you got to kneel down and you got to do this. You have to assume the posture, right? So I couldn't wait to get back to church. And then they had a guest speaker. And this guy had a heavy accent, and they went on and on and on. All I wanted to do was clear out of there, but they started singing. And this little lady with a knot in front of me, up went the hands, and I said, Lord, I'll do anything, but I ain't raising my hands. And my hands got heavier and heavier, and it felt like lead. Pulling my hands down, and I was sure they weren't my shoe tops. It just felt so heavy. God said, up. And I kind of straightened, and I said, God, I can't do that. He said, you want what I got, you do what I tell you, up. And so I lifted him up this high, because nobody back there could see me, see? And unwilling to make the risk, to make the commitment and take the risk of being known to do something foolish, I thought. And so he said, up, higher. And so I got him here, and my thought was, oh no, they can see my fingertips. They're higher than my shoulders. As if anyone cared in that. They were all praising the Lord. No one was even looking at me, but I felt like every eye was boring into me, So finally I thought, oh, well, they've seen anyway. So I lifted him up, and the funniest thing happened. I got a tingle in the tips of my fingers that felt like an electric current. It went all the way through, and it literally felt like two puddles began to form and run out from my big toes. Well, it was so real that I was afraid to look down. No one would believe what happened if they see puddles on the floor, And I said, what is that? And God spoke to my heart, and he said, don't worry, I've just melted your pride.
Praise God.
Because I had been so frozen in fear of what people would think of me that I wouldn't do what was natural for a child of God. This is a sign of surrender. Around the world, if you stick a gun in somebody's back, the first thing they're going to do is raise their hands. It's a sign of surrender. And so I didn't realize that, but then I just wanted them to get out of there so I could go up behind the altar, behind the organ, behind the heavy red velvet drapes, on the floor, in the dark, and ask God for that gift. So Mom went, I told her I was going to stay, and everybody filed out. They turned off the lights in the foyer, and I went up behind the altar, behind all the way back to the door, knelt down on this rugged old wooden floor, and I said this very fervent prayer. I said, Father, if this is from you, then I want it. But if it isn't from you, keep it far from me. And with that, a word came into my mind. And I said, I don't want to say that word. And it came again. I said, give me a better word. That one don't make sense. It sounds like baby talk. See, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to understand it. And he gave it to me again, and I said, give me an intelligent word. And the word came the third time, very strongly. And so I looked around, make sure nobody was there. I said, okay, I'll say it.